Steven Totillo seems to have the inside scoop over on Axios about what Microsoft is planning to do in the near future when they present to the CMA. And that includes some different findings, some different conclusions than what the CMA have come to. Let's dive into this story right now. So this initially was discovered by myself on Twitter, and it's Steven Totillo tweeted the following. He said, exclusive, Microsoft believes that the UK competition regulator has overestimated the amount of Call of Duty fans who'd leave PlayStation for Xbox if Microsoft took COD from Sony, and has survey results they say prove it. They share their data with me. He continues on. One of the UK's main arguments against the deal is that Microsoft would have financial incentives to make Call of Duty Xbox PC only, regardless of Microsoft's promises not to. And the UK backed that up with its own survey. As you'll see in the story, 2 surveys, 2 different results. So it's going to be interesting to see the CMA try and prove which one was correct. But let's dive into Totillo's story a little bit more, because there's a little bit more to discover here. So here's Axios. It's a newsletter that Totillo writes, and it says, Microsoft says that the UK regulator that might block its Activision Blizzard acquisition has significantly overcounted the potential impact of making the Call of Duty franchise exclusive to Xbox and PC, the tech giant first tells Axios. Now, think about that for a second. The main argument that all PlayStation fans who don't want this deal to go through, or just consumers or people in the industry who don't want this to go through, the main argument that's being made is that so many people would switch from PlayStation to Xbox if Call of Duty was made exclusive, that PlayStation would basically go out of business or just be decimated to the point where they wouldn't be able to do anything. We know that a lot of revenue does count from Call of Duty, about $1 billion, I think, but they posted much more than that in overall revenue. So the idea that this reality that's never going to take place, Microsoft has no plans to make Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox. We know that there's a parity offer on the table for 10 years where it can come to PlayStation Plus if they choose to. It can come to Xbox Game Pass. And PlayStation is saying, well, that's not how we want to do it. We want our little bit extra cut, because they were getting preferential treatment over Microsoft and everybody else because, you know, they have the larger install base, and now they just have to play on an even playing field for everybody else. And that seems to have them riled up a little bit. Well, let's dive into what the poll that Microsoft said, because it seems what we all knew was true. Very few people would actually switch from PlayStation to Xbox if Call of Duty was made exclusive. During Driving the News, a YouGov survey commissioned by Microsoft in January found that just 3% of all PlayStation users would switch to buying an Xbox if Microsoft pulled Call of Duty from PlayStation, according to a copy of the study shared by Microsoft with Axios. And what's interesting about that is the argument is that everybody would switch to Xbox. Xbox is a big ecosystem, so the separate survey was talking about how people would buy a PC versus a PlayStation. Now let's think about that for a second. You think you're just going to throw your PlayStation in the trash and buy a PC? No, you're not. And PlayStation is also trying to expand their gamer base. Returnal, Last of Us Part 1, those are about to release on PC. PlayStation wants those consumers also purchasing their games on that platform. And they've also talked about expanding their reach beyond just the PlayStation console. It's something both companies are trying to do. So this idea of switching platforms seems a little ridiculous to me. I think they would either buy an Xbox in addition, or the 3% who outright just play Call of Duty, that's probably just their main game. The CMA's own survey conducted by DJS Research in December estimates that 15% of avid Call of Duty PlayStation players playing at least 10 hours or spending at least $100 on the series in the past year would switch to Xbox. The CMA's own figure for all PlayStation owners who leave for Xbox is redacted from the public's version of its recently released provisional findings, though it's cited as proof that PlayStation is likely to lose a significant share. Microsoft's survey found that 10.5% of COD gamers who ranked the franchise as one of their two favorites would have switched consoles. So 2 pieces of data there. The first piece of data says that 3% of all PlayStation users would switch. And then people who consider COD one of their top 2, 89.5% of them would stay on the PlayStation brand, and 10.5 of them would switch consoles. So even adding those percentages together, you're still at like 13%, but I have to imagine the 3% and the 10% are one or the same. So it's interesting. Who is telling the truth? That's sort of the question. But this is a good counter to what the CMA is claiming to be definitive proof. They're just like, well, we did a YouGov survey and here's what we discovered. You know what I also discovered? That when I ask people to subscribe, sometimes they do. So please consider hitting that subscribe button, hitting that bell if you have not yet. Thank you for watching thus far. What they're saying, though, is as we have said all along, it makes zero business sense to take Call of Duty off PlayStation. Rima Aleli, the corporate vice president of Microsoft's competition law group, tells Axios. She said YouGov's finding of 3% of PlayStation players switching to Xbox was too small to hurt Sony's ability to compete and too small to make a withholding strategy profitable for Xbox. So I believe it was $1.5 billion. Let's round that up to $2 billion worth of revenue for that particular, for PlayStation, right? So $2 billion. What is 3% of that? Not a lot. I'll just bring up the calculator. So 2 billion, 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's million. Add it 20 million, 200 million, $2 billion times 0.03%. That is $60 million. That's a lot of money, right? But it's not enough to make a dent in Sony's overall business, especially when you're talking about billions and billions of dollars, right? So it would be significant, but not significant enough where it would be detrimental to competition, is the argument that Microsoft seems to be trying to make. Between the lines, though, Axios points out smartly, the conflicting Microsoft and CMA surveys are similar, though not identical. The UK survey found that a hypothetical loss of Call of Duty to Xbox and PC would send 9% of avid Call of Duty PlayStation players to buy a PC, for a total of 24% switching from PlayStation to another platform. Microsoft's survey was focused on console switching. The only responses it gathered regarding PlayStation fans switching to PC were obtained through write-ins. So, Microsoft being a little bit more focused, and it would seem that, according to this Axios report, this is actually being included in the response to the CMA, which has not yet been public. I think we're going to be getting a little bit more CMA news over the coming days, and it's really exciting to see that we're already getting some insight into what they are saying. So they're countering the CMA's arguments, PlayStation arguments about what would happen if, and remember, that's a big if, they've basically offered Call of Duty for 10 years to everybody on planet Earth. Even PlayStation has a contract sitting on the table, but they want a little bit more of that cheddar. And no one, let's be honest, PlayStation gamers, you're not switching consoles. I'm not going to sell my PlayStation because Call of Duty, even if Call of Duty were made exclusive, I would never sell my PlayStation just because that one game was made exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem. So I think it's a little ridiculous, and that's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen because nobody's going to let it happen in the legal sphere, and Microsoft has no plans to make that happen. So the whole thing is a little ridiculous, but this is interesting. We get a little bit of insight into what is going on with the CMA case. And I have a little bit of insight into you subscribing and hitting that channel, because recently we had 100,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I want to say thank you to everybody who's watched and supported. Thank you to the members. We've seen an explosion in members. Hopefully I can do more interviews like that one, because it seemed like we got a few new members on the board. I appreciate all of you very much. If you want to become a member and don't like ads, click that join button down there. And sometimes when I have something cool, you definitely get to see it first, ad free, of course. If you want to check out that Florian Mueller interview, you can check it out here. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.